This is a story of a life. Now, who knows how long, and I'm indifferent to the length. I think so far as doing much, I'm done. But I do think I have a story to tell. And it's a story of what was and what wasn't. Of enjoyment. If there's much enjoyment in my life. And not very much pain, for I accepted the life that I had and did the best with it. I always said, did the best I could. I had guides, people, women especially I call Karen, books I'd read, people I've watched, things I've done, things I haven't done, all of which put this package of just another story, I think. But for me, it's the only story I have. So they're very fractured, very fragmented, like the memories that I have. I don't have total recall of anything, including what goes on now. If I didn't record this, I would have no memory of it, except that I'm standing here really a little bit sad, and yet at the same time entirely joyful. Well, it's a story I have. The snow has been off and on this morning, about half and half. It's just a nice day to be at home. And finally I put on this red dress after promising. So I call this my mother's dress. It's perhaps the oldest one I own. And whenever I wear it or feel the need to wear it, I think of my mother. And my mother is an important part of my story. Very, very important. So maybe I can awaken a little bit by wearing this dress, awaken this woman to me. I have two stories today. The one is about my earliest memories, and the other is a story about a lost shoe, the old woman and his shoe. So let me begin. The snow, off and on this morning, now subsides. The wind, perhaps you can hear it in the background, remains strong from the west. It's now almost noon. Maybe I'll introduce Mom. I've words to guide me that I've written in previous pages. I need but this dress. The pumps, do they match the jewels well? The jewels come from my niece. Was my earliest memory that of looking at Chicago American funny Sunday funnies in the living room of Grandpa Deitch. And there I was in a corner next to wooden cabinets, built-in cabinets. I think I see a fireplace there and windows expanding out into Lake Michigan, surrounding this living room and opening into a dining room, almost down a porch, but it was a very formal dining room. And on the other side of the entranceway to this family room, this living room we called it, upstairs. I would only go when I play hide and go seek, and I don't remember it. I remember much of the kitchen, and I remember, but I was older then, even in school. I remember my grandfather in the front bedroom as he was dying. I remember being at the funeral in this when I was 7 years old. But was my earliest memory, the one that remains anyway, I don't think it's my earliest memory, there in the living room. Maybe, though, it was an early memory And at my first home, the Pearl Street home, perhaps it was a search for a lost shoe, for I was raised during World War II, and any clothing item was hard to find, without a pun. It was lost, though, on Sunnyside, a beach at the western end of Pearl Street. The eastern edge ended near the river at the Werner bottling plant, Werner's Ginger Ale, now called Werner's Ginger Soda, I guess. And instead of being from Detroit, it's Mr. Pepper from Texas, and it isn't the same. I remember being in the small toilet closet at Grant's, a dry goods store in downtown St. Joseph. These were early moments of memory, all seemingly during World War II, which happened before we moved to Grandpa Deitch's wished-for home at first, and then that he owned on Wayne Street. Then, in the late 1800s perhaps, a home in the country that guided him to dental school in Chicago and gave his daughters a nearby elementary school. I don't remember if my grandmother was alive then. I don't think she was. My grandfather went through three, I think it was, wives. And the second was my mother's mother. And the third, the one I remember, we called her Aunt Belle. My strongest feeling of memory was being in her bedroom on Wayne Street, but a facing Pearl, perhaps. There were many choices then, and I do remember what happened the day World War II ended, August 15th, 1945, on that day I received a bang to celebrate the ending, I suppose, being pushed by my brother from that window facing Pearl Street, and fell, striking my head on a piece of glass. My brother was talented in such acts of force against me. I had more than a few trips to the sanatorium on Niles Avenue in our town, south of where we lived. Our house was built before the Civil War, the sanatorium, our hospital, much later, but there, in yells and tears, I too frequently had my wounds bound. Dr. Richmond removed them later in his downtown office, where I was rewarded at this Grant store across from him, after I somewhat quietly suffered, and once I clearly remember was rewarded with a toy submarine I lusted for during my recovery. It was a choice made with effort, suffering that pain for the small pleasure, for I was afraid of Dr. Richmond. Mother kept her promise, though, to me if I behaved. Well, I received that gift. I suppose I'd rather have had by then a dress. I preferred, though, this toy to dolls then. I was told to do so. I had learned to do so before I went to school. as a child, even if reluctantly, even then I obeyed.